have achieved what I like to think of as a pretty big milestone, the first 100 kilometers, or as I typically call it, about 62. It's actually more like 64 miles, but let's face it, 100 kilometers sounds way cooler than 63.8 miles. And what's happened in that first 63.8 miles has been a lot of really exciting things and some things that are just purely bummer city. You guys may remember a few weeks ago we had our first fire up, maiden voyage. Everything was good after some initial hiccups with a crank position sensor that got worked out really quick. Drove the car, ran good, everyone's happy. Pulled it back into the shop. I wanted to run some gauges. So now we have a boost gauge. This boost gauge also has a boost controller built into it. We have a wideband O2 sensor so I can monitor air fuel. That's fully installed and working fantastic. And an oil pressure gauge to go along with it. The oil pressure gauge is installed, it's wired up. It's just not fully functioning because I need to drop the pressure sending unit into the oil filter housing. Before that goes in, I'm going to install an oil pressure switch relocation kit from 42 Draft Design so I can pull it off of the oil filter housing, clean that area up a little bit. Otherwise, I don't think I'd have room for all the oil pressure switches, the temperature sender, and the feed line for the turbocharger. Of course, I filmed all that, so I'll be showing you guys how to do those things. As it sits right now, I'm actually working on the suspension. You can see the front right corner is considerably lower than it was from stock ride height. Stock ride height, the bottom of the fender lip is about right here. So it's come down pretty good, a little over 2 inches. Still working on the back to get it exactly where I want it. And of course, I'll be showing you guys how to do all of that, the right way to install your coilovers, how to set them up, how to start with an initial adjustment, bring it up, bring it down, depending on your target ride height. Knowing your target ride height is really the key to the initial setup. Then there's going to be, of course, some trial and error for not only looks, but ride quality, rubbing, everything like that. We want it to be right. We want our suspension to be dialed in and as perfect as we can get it. Leading up to the Black Forest Oktoberfest, I hadn't really driven the car because I wanted to get the gauges installed. I wanted to make sure everything was dialed in up front, no leaks, nothing like that. So there was some downtime of the car while the gauges were installed. The Friday before the Black Forest Oktoberfest, I put the front end on, got the core support properly installed, the lights all installed. Oddly enough, all the lights worked, minus one pinch bulb for the front marker. So that's pretty impressive for having sat for a year and a half. Got it all put back together, tried to fire it up, and lo and behold, crank, no start. So we did some things, push it outside, try to get it fired up again, ran a scan tool on it, found throttle body faults, tinkered around with the throttle body a little bit, didn't really get anywhere, put it on hold for a couple of hours. I was in the garage till 2 or 3 a.m. poking around through the scan tool, through the wiring diagram, hands-on underneath the hood, trying to figure out what exactly was wrong. Well, it turns out that I have adopted a new policy. Always through my career, I had the policy of never walk away from a loose drain plug, never walk away from a loose lug nut or wheel bolt. Well, now I have adopted the never walk away from a loose connector. While I was doing the gauges, I disconnected the 42-pin barrel connector underneath the hood. And when I was getting everything set back in, apparently I just set it on the connector and didn't rotate it all the way to lock it in. So thankfully in the wiring diagram, I was able to find some commonalities between some of the things I was having issue with. Even though I only had one fault code, found some common issues, remembered that I'd never plugged the barrel connector in, went, twisted it, fired it up instantly after that. In my head, I thought everything was good, so went to sleep, woke up Saturday, got the garage clean, cleaned the car up a little bit, put some stuff away around it, took it on a quick spin around the neighborhood just to make sure it was good before making the about 20-mile drive to Black Forest Industries. Well, lo and behold, as I came back into the driveway, parked it, let it sit for a few minutes, kaboom, went the heater core line. So I'm literally standing, looking at the engine compartment, making sure, eyeballs on everything, making sure everybody's happy, and I just watch the line explode. Off to the parts store I go, try and find some way to bypass it, just temporarily until I can get the dash out. Of course, we got the new dash back here that's going to be going in anyway, so all that's coming out. But I needed to drive it to this car show. Unfortunately, the big player auto parts stores were no help at all, so I ran to what has become my go-to place for things like that. That's right, Home Depot Motorsports. Shout out to Apex Tuning for letting me steal that phrase because I absolutely love the Home Depot Motorsports phrase. Actually, a PEX elbow fit perfectly, crimped it down, got it dialed in, filled the coolant back up, and hopped in it and drove it out to Black Forest. On the way there, I realized I didn't have the toe quite right, so I decided to stop by my old dealership and just have them set the front toe. I knew we'd be doing the suspension the next few days anyway, so I wasn't super concerned about it, but I didn't want to destroy the front tires and have to buy new tires before we even get the new suspension on. On the way there, I was having some issues with rubbing in the back because the suspension was so worn out. By the time I got to the dealership, and it boggles my mind that I didn't take a picture of this, by the time I got to the dealership, in the back, the fenders were sitting on top of the tires. How that happens, I really don't understand. The spring should keep it up high enough to not do that. It could be bouncy if the shock absorbers are worn out. Oddly enough, jacked the car up, set it back down, and it was fine. So got the toe straight, drove it to BFI, had a great show, got to meet a ton of really great fans out there. Took one picture and hung out with you guys most of the day. A lot of fun. Drove it home, made it home, no problem. In the dark, put, again, about 60 miles on it. Hit boost a few times. Torque steer like crazy, which I expected due to the way the suspension is and how weak everything is. The new suspension will help almost all of that. We'll dial in the alignment a little bit to try and overcome some of that torque steer and hopefully get it perfect. I'm really excited about that. That's kind of been the last couple weeks, some trials, tribulations, some really exciting things. I love the gauge setup. I love where it is in the radio location. I will be relocating the radio somewhere else. I'm not quite sure on where that's going to be just yet. It really depends on what kind of radio I get. I love how the suspension's coming out. This ride height here is pretty good. It's pretty close to where I want it. The suspension does need to settle a little bit, so it might actually come down a touch more. Actually, what I'll probably do is spin the fronts up a little bit just to bring it up so that when it settles, it's about that height. As far as the rear goes, because the rear suspension was so worn out, even though where I set the coilover should have dropped it about a half of an inch to an inch, it actually raised the back end up. So we need to bring the back end down quite a bit in order to match the change in suspension height to the front. And then, of course, once all that's set, I'll take it, I'll get it properly aligned. We'll set toe again, we'll set camber. There is camber adjustments on the front. There is toe and camber adjustments in the rear. That does require shims behind the spindle for the axle. So I'm not 100% sure on what I'm going to do with that. It really will depend on the severity of the alignment being out. If it's out a little, I'm dealing with it. If it's out a pretty good amount, I'll go ahead and shim it. All that stuff's going to be coming out at some point anyway. I want to rehab the rear suspension, the rear axle beam, new bushings, steel braided brake lines. It needs new parking brake cables, which we're going to do beforehand. So that leads to what's next? Well, of course, you're going to get a video on the suspension and how to dial in your coilovers. Going to get a video on gauges on how to install that, how to set those up, air fuel, boost controller, as well as oil pressure. The oil pressure gauge had too short of a harness, so I had to make a longer harness, which was, it's super easy and stuff I really enjoy doing. Not a problem at all. We'll route that real nice, make it look just like it did from the factory. As part of the turbo upgrade, I am going to be upgrading the fuel pump in the tank. Another benefit of driving it to the BFI show is I got to run it almost completely out of fuel, so doing the fuel pump will be quite a bit easier. That'll also give us an opportunity to fill it full with premium, good quality fuel that hasn't been sitting for a year and a half. The fuel in the car now is a year and a half old, so I think fresh fuel will really help this vehicle. And of course, whenever you do a fuel pump, you want to do a fuel filter as well. So we'll get a new fuel filter on it. I'll show you guys how to do all of that kind of stuff. None of it's very hard. Sometimes you just have to watch it and see someone else do it to get that confidence to do it yourself. After those things happen, it's going to be a lot of time doing this behind the wheel and some shifting and some boosting to get the engine broken in and the clutch fully broken in. After that, we'll do some maintenance on it, drain and fill the oil, change the filter out, make sure we don't have any unhappies inside the oiling system, and then we're going to drive it. We're going to just drive it. I'll probably end up driving it for a couple of months before I jump into the next big mod. Now, we'll be doing some other things. I'll be redoing the bushings in the seat. Of course, I'll show you guys how to do that. A lot of cleaning because the car's pretty dirty. While I'm at SEMA and Apex show, I'll probably take it to my buddy Scott who's going to refinish the roof. There's some damage on the roof that needs to be redone. I'm guessing the whole roof's going to have to get painted. So I'm going to let the professionals take care of that one. We need to work on getting the charge cooler piping complete. Right now it looks okay, but I really feel like it's kind of just thrown together. So I'm going to take it up to Apex Tuning. We're going to really dial in the charge cooler piping, get them welded up so that there's not so many couplers in the system. You have to have couplers. They have to be there. That system needs to flex because you have the rigid front piece of the intercooler, and then you have the engine, which does move back and forth. So there needs to be some flex, but I'm worried about having too many couplers. Plus, let's be honest, some of the couplers don't match, and you guys know how that is. It's going to drive me nuts. So we need to get that all dialed in. Going to be doing a radio, going to be doing a sound system. Of course, eventually the interior is going to be coming out. Needs new carpet. We'll be putting some sound damper in it. I don't know exactly what I'm going to go with yet. There's a couple of things that I'm looking at now. I got a sub. I'm going to put some new speakers in it. I don't need a crazy sound system because, let's face it, Wookie noises are a beautiful, beautiful thing. Oh, one other video I forgot that's going to be coming very soon along the lines of like when the fuel pump gets done is parking brake cables. The parking brake cables in this car are completely shot. They won't hold the car at all. Even cranked all the way up, it barely holds the car while it's, you know, on a slight incline. Replacing those are very, very easy. The finesse, the skill comes in with adjusting the parking brake, and I'll show you guys exactly how to do that. I have all but perfected a method on setting these parking brakes up on these cars especially, but it should work for just about any car out there. With that, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Questions, comments, you know what to do. If you like the video, thumbs up, always appreciate that. Don't forget to subscribe right here on YouTube and ding the notification bell, or over on the blog at humblemechanic.com. If you want exclusive content, discounts to some of the awesome supporters of this build like Black Forest Industries, Eastwood, Sonic Tools, Mycanic, MT Knives, Adams Polishes, which I'll probably be using to clean this old girl, and more. Check out the crew membership program. It's a great way to help support the show, support the work I do for you guys, as well as get an awesome return on your investment. If you're buying parts from those companies, you're gonna almost guarantee you're gonna make your money back, or at least break even. Some guys are even making money on being part of the crew membership program, which is awesome. That's what I wanted all together. You can join Patreon, and there's some unique stuff over there, or the easiest free way to support the show is mash that Amazon link, buy what you're gonna buy on Amazon, and I get a little credit for it. Super easy, free to do, just helps me out quite a bit. Don't forget, you can also listen to a lot of these shows on iTunes or your favorite podcasting platform. Just type in Humble Mechanic Podcast, or you can go to the blog and click the audio tab, and it'll take you to all the audio shows I got. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, sometimes anyway, on Snapchat. All right, guys, hey, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for following the build. I'm excited. I love this car. It was so great. The feeling of hitting boost was amazing. It was amazing. I'm pumped. I owe you guys a ride along. Once the suspension's done, we'll mic it up, get some real good Wookie noise, and I'll take you for a spin, because if I'm as excited as I am about it, I think you guys are gonna love it too. All right, guys, thanks for watching. See you next time.